The next article I wanted to look at is titled Michele Bachmann Claims the Progressive Left Carried Out the Capitol Insurrection to Put Trump Down the Memory Hole, whatever the holy fuck that is. So let's give this a read. It's by Kyle Mantilla on rightwingwatch.org. Former Congresswoman Michele Bachmann continues to baselessly insist that the insurrection on January 6th, in which Trump supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol in an attempt to prevent Congress from certifying Joe Biden's election as president, was actually carried out by the progressive left, quote unquote. God, that was a sentence and a half, wasn't it? It wasn't a run-on sentence, it was just a really fucking long sentence. During an appearance on Jan Markle's Understanding the Times radio program Sunday, Bachmann claimed that the insurrection was really a false flag operation carried out by liberals for the purpose of harming the MAGA movement and undermining President Donald Trump's legacy. So I figured we'd give this clip a watch and see what she had to say for herself. This was released, I believe, on 5/26. Let's give it a listen.
January 6th. We're all told that that's the worst day that ever happened. These were the worst riots in America. It absolutely wasn't. It is my opinion that this was a theatrical event that the progressive left put on.
Okay, hold the fucking phone for a second. This was a theatrical event perpetrated by the progressive left. Fascinating theory. Is there literally any evidence at all to support that, or is this just pulled straight out of your ass?
Individuals who were the instigators who brought this about. These were agitators brought in to create this problem. I believe it was specifically done to rebrand Donald Trump as being an insurrectionist and a leader of a terrorist movement.
Well, those things are factual. We have the evidence, the hard evidence. And I know Michele Bachmann isn't a huge fan of accepting evidence or even looking at evidence, but that's just what it is, man. I'm sorry. That's just what it is.
This was done to rebrand the Make America Great agenda because remember, that was considered extremely popular by about 80 million Americans.
No, that is inaccurate. It was not. Donald Trump didn't get 80 million votes. Donald Trump got 74 million votes. Biden got 81.2 million votes. Yeah. So, no. Trump did not get 80 million votes. If Trump had gotten 80 million votes, he still wouldn't have won the popular vote, but there's a higher probability that he would have won the Electoral College at the very least. He didn't get 80 million votes. Nice try rewriting history.
They wanted to rebrand Make America Great as an evil thing. And those of us who supported Donald Trump and that agenda as evil and terrorists.
Is there another perspective you want to provide to me here? I mean, that's exactly what happened. A Confederate battle flag didn't even make its way to the Capitol building in the Civil War. Not until the 1/6 insurrection did a flag grace those halls. That's fucking sad. These people broke into the Capitol building with blood on their mind. They set up gallows out back and were calling for Mike Pence's head. Somebody came in with zip tie handcuffs looking for members of Congress. Secret Service had to take somebody out to protect members of Congress and Mike Pence and others. What the fuck do you call it? I understand Michele believes that there was this conspiracy, that it was the left or whatever, but we're going to get to a story in a minute that'll disprove that. We'll get to it in a minute. Let's keep listening.
All a lie. As your listeners have seen, in the last 5 months, you wouldn't even know that Donald J. Trump was ever the president. You wouldn't even know that those 4 years of his presidency existed.
Was the work that he did so inconsequential that it was that easy to overturn? It could be undone in like 100 days by the next guy. Was it that fucking simple? Seems like that's Trump's fault.
George Orwell wrote a book, 1984. He talked about a concept called the memory hole.
Oh, here we go. These people absolutely fucking love tying things back to George Orwell.
If the government in charge didn't want you to remember someone, they put them in the memory hole. Donald J. Trump has been put in a memory hole. Make America Great Again has been put in a memory hole. In other words, it never happened.
Give me a fucking break. What is she even talking about? It's like it never happened. We're all talking about Trump because he has a cult following, a full-blown religious cult behind him right now. It's impossible to not talk about this stuff when he is so incredibly consequential to what happens in the government right now. Trump has this bizarre fucking level of control over members of Congress. I don't know why they're so obsessed with him and appeasing him and acting just like him and trying to get his endorsement. I don't know why. But he is far from in a quote-unquote memory hole. Are you saying because the media isn't releasing an article every time the guy fucking says something on the internet, he's suddenly in a memory hole? Just because he's not the sole focus of the news cycle now, he's in a memory hole? Give me a fucking break. I thought it would be an interesting exercise, though, to see what she had to say immediately after 1/6. What did she have to say? No, this was right before 1/6, I think.
This was a coup in Georgia with these same...
Yeah, okay. This is right before the 1/6 insurrection. This was on January 6th. So I believe she said this right before anything really happened, before everybody realized the gravity of everything. Let's listen to what she had to say here.
This was a coup in Georgia with these same phony machines run by Stacey Abrams down there. She's not even elected, but she's running the state.
Okay, what? What is she talking about? Stacey Abrams running a state even though she's not elected? What is she talking about? Stacey Abrams just helped people get registered to vote, and she volunteered to help at polling locations. That is it. Just like any other Trump supporter could have done if they wanted. People are allowed to volunteer to vote. That's how voting works. You sign up to volunteer. If you don't like the fact that a liberal person is in the polls helping people vote, then you get in there and help them too. Nothing's stopping you as long as you don't have a criminal record or anything, I guess.
These bought-off phony Republicans down in Georgia. It was a coup so that the Senate was lost today, stolen today. And now they want to finish the job. And they want the coup to be done today on January 6th so they can seal the deal with Joe Biden as the next president of the United States. Today was the day to have the coup, to put it all in process.
Well, little did she know a coup did take place that day. It was a failed coup. It was Trump's little group of extremists charging the Capitol. But interestingly enough, do you remember a minute ago when Michele Bachmann said this whole thing was staged by the left? There weren't really Trump supporters there doing any of that shit. You guys remember this guy? This is the desk guy, the dude who was sitting in Nancy Pelosi's office with his feet up on her desk, and he was making faces. He stole her mail. Do you remember that shit? Stole her fucking mail. Remember this guy? Guess where he is now? He's got a whole fucking website dedicated to helping him pay for his legal defense. This is his legal defense fund website. Guy's name is Richard Bego Barnett, I guess. By the way, do not harass, stalk, or contact this guy in any way. In fact, I may cut his name out. Just leave people alone. It's not good. There are already people working on getting him removed from PayPal, because that's how he's basically paying for his legal defense. But I thought it would be an interesting exercise to kind of go through this little fundraising website he's got set up here. See what he had to say for himself. Let's see. Let's click on the Fight for America's Soul. What does he have to say in this section? Remember, this guy, according to Michele Bachmann, I guess this guy is supposed to be a leftist Antifa member who's trying to fuck over conservatives and make them look like monsters or something. I don't know. Let's see what he had to say for himself. This is one of the people who stormed the Capitol. The United States government has a long history using media-driven propaganda to scapegoat entire groups of people in order to increase the federal government's reach and power while diminishing our constitutionally protected rights. Oh, shit. Are they comparing themselves to African Americans in the 1930s and 40s during segregation and during Jim Crow? Is that what they're doing here? Is that what they're about to do? For instance, the federal government's decision to force all persons of Japanese ancestry into internment camps in the name of national security gained national support through media-driven propaganda and was subsequently upheld by the Supreme Court in 1944 in Korematsu v. United States. Oh, okay, so they're comparing themselves to Japanese people during World War II when they were put into internment camps. Makes perfect sense. I understand now. These people live in a fucking delusion. Seriously, these people live in a delusion. Years later, after the events of September 11, 2001, the government reacted by passing the Patriot Act, unconstitutional expansions in its use, and the mass surveillance of United States citizens by the NSA. As part of the Russia hoax, Carter Page, an advisor of the Trump campaign, was illegally spied on based on an altered CIA email by an FBI attorney. His punishment? Probation! Today, Trump supporters are typecasted as domestic extremists by a media propaganda machine. That's because we watched it happen right in front of our fucking faces. We watched this shit unfold in front of our eyes. This guy right here on the front page threw his feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk, stole her mail, broke into the Capitol in the first place, wasn't allowed to be there, and was part of a mob that had set up gallows and was shouting for Mike Pence's head. If that's not domestic terrorism, I honestly don't know what is. By a media propaganda machine that openly encourages the illegal pre-trial detention of U.S. citizens by the federal government. Yeah, okay, so what they're saying here, the illegal pre-trial detention, I don't think it's illegal to put people in pre-trial detention as long as they have access to a speedy trial. If it's a felony, their preliminary trial has to be within the first 10 days. They can't sit in jail longer than that before their first trial. For misdemeanors, there is no limit to that number. It can be as long as they want. And I have to say, I agree with them. That should not be the case. D.C. detention facility has become Guantanamo Bay for scores of January 6ers whose human rights are violated on a daily basis with the media's blessing. Okay, now I don't believe in violating anybody's human rights. I don't care who it is, period. They're not human rights if not every human has them, right? It's not a right if it can be taken away. So, I don't want anyone's human rights being yanked, period. But, sorry, you're going to have to give me a little more evidence that your human rights are being violated before I'm going to accept it, because your credibility is in the toilet at this point. While the U.S. government has cloaked its thirst for censorship and lust for control in its corporate agents known as Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, and Google for the sole purpose of circumventing the Constitution. Okay, can't these individual companies make decisions for themselves? I thought that's the nature of capitalism, isn't it? Why is this dude bitching about the U.S. government not preventing companies from exercising their right to freedom of speech? This is demonstrated by the fact that at this very moment we cannot meaningfully use our electronic devices absent forced privacy waivers, which begets the warrantless government tracking of everything we do. Demonstrated further by the fact that our liberty interests are being unlawfully intruded upon by a government that demands its citizens produce approved papers before being allowed to travel, worship, or associate. Oh, here's the vaccine passport bullshit that they're pushing now. Okay, you've always needed vaccines to travel to certain countries. That is not new. They just added one to the list, period. And they haven't even added it to the list necessarily yet. Europe and the UK and other places, they haven't actually opened to anybody yet, or not to the US yet, right? Even with a vaccine. I think that's on the way once you get a vaccine, but it hasn't even happened yet. And either way, I'm not going to have a problem with it when it does. And the fact that our elected officials are forming an inquisition to stamp out the rise of anti-President Biden sentiment. Nobody is doing that. Look, the government has functioned as it always has. Not very well. But no elected officials are forming an inquisition. The fuck is this even talking about? An inquisition. I feel like they don't actually know what an inquisition is. I feel like they don't know what happened back then. If they did, they would be embarrassed to use that word. Another word for Inquisition is Holocaust. That's basically what was taking place back then. Their message is clear. If you object to the November election results or stand against the Biden administration in any way, not only will you be canceled, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez will put you on a Gestapo-like list. Give me a fucking break. This is just straight up propaganda from beginning to end. Your employer will terminate your job, your freedom will be taken, and then you'll be thrown into a gulag for an undetermined amount of time without ever having had a criminal trial. These people live in a delusion. and it's so fucking sad. I don't even know what to do. Our response to the cancel culture activists. The Spanish Inquisition was wrong, and so is yours. If you actually understood what the Spanish Inquisition was, if you actually understood what happened back then, you wouldn't call this an Inquisition. I should do a whole segment about the Inquisition, what it was and what happened and how it all played out. But if I did, that video would probably rightfully be demonetized. It's pretty fucking bad. It's pretty gory. It's a very ugly story. The fact that they're comparing themselves to Japanese people in internment camps in the 1940s and victims of the Spanish Inquisition should tell you all you need to know about where their heads are at right now. Here's the very bottom. Because patriotism is supporting your country all the time, but your government only when it deserves it. Mark Twain. I get the impression he's saying that, you know, what he did on January 6th basically was an insurrection. He doesn't support the government. The government doesn't deserve it. I mean, am I reading this wrong? By him putting that quote there, that's what I'm getting from it. As a token of his appreciation for contributions of $25 or more, Richard will email you a copy of his court filing that resulted in his release. For contributions of $100 or more, Richard will send you a picture of him with his feet up on a desk while on house arrest. Richard sends his deepest thanks and appreciation for any amount of money you can give and asks for your prayers and continued support on the front lines of the fight for his freedom and the soul of our country. You know, if you don't want to be put in jail, then don't break into the U.S. Capitol and toss a congressman's office and put your feet up on her desk. I'm sorry, man. You're getting what you deserve in this situation. I have zero sympathy. So tell me again, Michele Bachmann, whose fault was this? Was this staged by the left, or are you living in delusion land too?